No, inimbara. Assalamu alaikum.
Ngal be tiblo kon.
Yeah, uncle, but you blow on man. Let me just stop this music real quick. Yeah, we're like exactly 1 p.m. here in Seattle. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation and thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. I'm really excited to talk to you. So I think we can just start because
Okay.
I have a lot to talk to you about. I'm really excited about it.
Right.
So I'm just gonna get right on it. That way, we can just get it done with and continue with our Sunday to prepare for the week ahead. But thank you so much to everybody, wherever you follow us from, wherever you watch us from, wherever you listen to us from, either on YouTube or Facebook or on Spotify or even on Apple Podcasts. My name is Ibrahim Sonko. I am the host of the Dialectic Space podcast. And today I have the honor of having Dr. Ousman Gajigo with me to talk to me about his journey as a Gambian, but also as a political commentator and also as an economist as well, who had experience working for very revered economic institutions, including World Bank and African Development Bank in the world. So today, just briefly to put it into context, who my guest really is, Usman Gajiko was the manager for microeconomics, institutional and development impact division in the research development of the African Development Bank. He will tell us whether he's still there or when he left, or at the period under which he served under there. But he did had a work experience with African Development Bank. But also before that, he also founded and managed an agribusiness farm and served as a consultant between 2015 2019. And before that, he also did work, like I mentioned, at the World Bank and also Columbia University, which is a really prestigious university if you are into, really, schools like that. Dr. holds a PhD in development economics from University of Wisconsin, Madison, here in the United States. And his research focus or experience is in entrepreneurship, labor market, agricultural economics, natural resources, economics of education. Dr. Gajiko, welcome to the Dialogue Space podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sonko. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. Just to dive into it very quickly, you do a lot of public commentary in the Gambia. I think you've truly emerged out or stand out for just how your ability to talk to Gambians about issues that are important, especially in respect to politics and economy. And a lot of people, including here in the United States where I am, I talk to people, they're like, yeah, I really enjoy listening to him just because of his ability to dissect issues. But also when people ask who is this guy, I was like, there's not much about him in terms of except people who come from the same village or town or people of same age as you are able to tell you. But I just wanted you to begin by really telling us who is Dr. Gajiko? Where did you come from in the Gambia? What was your school training like? At what level did you leave the Gambia to go for further studies? Just in brief, walk us through your your upbringing and also your professional training to the point to either the World Bank or African Development Bank to transition into back to Gambia.
Thank you. I was born in Fatoto in URR, which is in Kantora district, specifically within URR. Um, my dad was teaching there. That's where I met my mom. But my dad actually is a native of Sabak Sanjal in Upper Badimo. So I attended various primary schools because as a teacher, they move around quite a bit. But I did my high school in Nusrat High School. Then I did 1 year of sixth form in Gambia High before I was lucky enough to get scholarship to do my undergraduate in the U.S. at Wabas College. Did my master's in San Diego State in California and my PhD in Wisconsin, as you indicated. Yeah. So after my my graduate degree, my first job was with Columbia University. I did start, even as a doctoral candidate, I was doing some consulting work with the World Bank. But after I finished my doctorate, I worked first at the Earth Institute in Colombia in the Millennium Villages project program. Um, and then later on, I moved to the World Bank for a brief period, then went to African Development Bank. I had two stints in ADB. I worked, from 2010 to 15, based mainly in Tunisia. Then resigned, came to Gambia for a few years. Since 2015, I've been in Gambia, but then I got contacted at some point to go back, and then I went back as manager of the Development Impact Division. So from 2019, and I officially left 2023. But as you know, because of COVID, essentially I was working from Gambia from 2021,
Oh
pretty
wow.
much. Yeah, so I literally was working from home, but officially left ADB in 2023. So since then, I would say I still have my economist hat on, but I'm also now mainly as a farmer because I have an agribusiness farm that I started in 2015
Mhm.
that operates across various sites in the Gambia, and it's still in operation, and that's really been my main focus. Yeah. So when I introduce myself now, I introduce myself first and foremost as a farmer, and I think of my commentary in political and economic affairs in the Gambia and consultancies as
Yeah.
secondary occupations.
But to that foundation, still, I was just curious because there's not a lot of people in the Gambia that grow up to want to be economists, and I was just curious at what level did you realize, in fact, economics is what you want to venture into? Because I've met somebody who is actually from Fatoto who also was telling me that he said, "Dude, when we were young, all of us want to be Dr. Gajigo." I said, "Well, it's not also every day that somebody comes from Gambia who wants, because economics is still, I'm not in economics. I'm studying some of it in my development law and developmental class. And so I mean, University of the Gambia has still a program in economics. Also, I mean, different forms of graduate studies in economics too. So I was just curious, what was the inspiration to venture into economics?
That's a good question. It's been a while. When I went to my undergrad, thank God, Wabash College is a liberal arts school, so you really had, you have to really explore a lot of fields, take a lot of subjects, a lot of courses. So it took a while before I focused on, economics. But it was basically as a liberal arts program, as I took many courses in a range of fields, it was something for me, it wasn't that much difficult to focus on it. Number one, I found it intellectually stimulating. And the first classes I talked about, when they talked about, what economics was useful for, problems it could address, it resonated with me very quickly because as a citizen of a poor country, I mean, here was a field that essentially was telling you, hey, for the problems that you face, the sort of poverty you left behind, this is a field that really holds the key to remedying those problems, provided you have the right institutions, the right leadership to implement and execute a well formulated plan that is, that is really, you know, uh, designed designed for your context. So for me, it was, once that epiphany, that realization set in, I knew this was something I was going to study, and then I made it very. I made sure that the preparations that I needed to do for further studies, I had that grounding.
Mhm.
As some of you may know right now, economics is a very quantitative field. So if you are going to go and do further studies in economics, you need to do a lot of quantitative fields like mathematics and statistics. So that's how I really came to be, and I have not looked back since I made the decision to really focus on economics.
Well, that's amazing. We're experiencing some camera blur from your end. It's probably maybe phone calls are coming in, so it's blurring your camera. But if you don't mind, maybe just for this stint, to have
Okay.
your phone on do not disturb, because people are going to keep calling. That's one experience that I always have. But so in
Right. Mhm.
yeah, so it's looking great. In very basic terms, I also thought this is important for me to ask you to explain to our audience. In very basic terms, talk to us about what economics really mean in the context of like Africa and also Gambia, because you hear this a lot of, or the economy is not doing great, or the economy is doing great, and there's not so many times in our context where you hear that the economy is doing well, and because so far we've been an impoverished country for a very very long time, for over 50 years, and still we still struggle with basic, like commodities. The price of commodities are skyrocketing. The dignity of human life is constantly coming down. It's not, I do not think that it's going up the way comparatively to other jurisdictions or countries, how they're doing. So I was just curious if you would care to explain to us what it means in very basic terms, what economy really is about, the process of what is considered as an economy, what it truly is.
Okay. How is the connection so far? I'm seeing some a bit of a delay still now. Am I
It's
is
great.
the audio and video clear
Yes,
now?
yes, it's great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Good. Yeah. No, I mean, basically, an economy should really be about the people at a very fundamental level. When you talk about the study of modern economics, it's basically all about decision making at the level of individuals or households, at the level of businesses, and at the level of government. If when you are talking about economy and you see a disconnect between what individuals and households are going through versus what official statistics say, you don't need to consult an expert to dispatch, I mean, to completely forget about what indicators are saying. At its basic fundamental level, it should be about people's lives. We care about businesses, to the extent that they do something meaningful for people's lives. We care about government decision making and policies to the extent that they do something meaningful for the lives of people, individuals, and households. So to me, and I think for many people who are probably well versed into the etymology of the word economics, it's all about what affects a household. So for me, and whether as a professional, my professional life in economics, or whether in the context of as an economic commentator in Gambian affairs, this is really what has been the driving motivator for me. What can we say about the standard of people's lives in the country? Is it getting better? How do the current policies, their implementations by the government, how do they directly affect people's lives? How do they affect people's lives through the investment decisions made by firms, through the employment decisions and labor demand decisions made by firms? It all comes down to that, and that really has been the main motivating and driving force for me, whether as an economics student, as an economics practitioner, or whether as a economics commentator in Gambian affairs. So, so the first thing to always ask is, if you want to go to the next question, how is the Gambian economy doing?
Yes,
My
yes,
first response
absolutely.
to you will be about, well, let's look at situation for the average Gambian household.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. So, and if you would want to expand on that a little bit, because obviously you did such a, I mean, good job to establish that basic, that fundamental principle of what really economics mean for any person or even a lay person to really understand. But the Gambian circumstance, what is the state of the Gambian economy? And you do talk about this greatly in most of your interviews and conversations and constant writings as well. Uh, it's, and recently we've seen the IMF also, sort of, came and gave some sort of orders, not so bluntly, but I wish it was so blunt. But you did also wrote about that in terms of just how they do that because of diplomatic reasons. But just talk to us a little bit about the economic situation of the country and what is really happening, and what areas could we really focus or prioritize to ensure that our economy is reflecting the sort of is improving the value and the dignity of human life in the Gambia.
Yeah, no, quite a relevant question. I'll get straight to the point. I mean, unfortunately, the economy of the Gambia is not doing very well. And I always start out, instead of quoting some high numbers or some abstract concepts, go down to the level of the people and ask what it means to the average Gambian. You know, uh, the cost of basic items in the country, whether you're talking about rice, whether you're talking about bread, whether you're talking about sugar, whether you're talking about, fish, these items have been increasing significantly. I can give you a specific number. The average kilo of rice in the Gambia in 2017 was $23. The price of an average kilo of rice today in the Gambia, this survey has been done covering every major town. The average price of a kilo of rice today in the Gambia is $52.
Wow.
So that means 100% increase in the price of rice, our staple commodity. But what has been the increase in income between 2017 and now? Per capita income, it averaged less than 3%. So, the cost of basic essential items have increased almost exponentially, while
Exponentially.
there has been only a perceptible small increase in the means to afford those. So affordability is getting worse. Again, if you want to go a bit further at the level of macroeconomy, the drivers of Gambian economy are agriculture and tourism. If you look at agriculture, again, Gambia, one thing you'll notice is that it's a rainfall dependent agriculture, which means rainfall is the biggest determinant of agricultural productivity and output. But as we know, rice, whether you look at rice or whether you look at groundnut, as I recently put in my Facebook post, all of these things have been declining in the Gambia. Again, you look at the case of individual farmers, they don't get the input they require, and the payment that the government has promised them always comes late. When you look at the tourist, the other sector, tourism, you don't you don't really have to look at the figures or any of the numbers. Just go to Senegambia area today. You compare that with a decade ago, how that area looks during the tourist season. Nowadays, you can't even tell the difference between the tourist and non-tourist season. It's a sector that is completely just on a downturn. So whether you're looking at, asking people basic, items about their cost of living, or whether you look at the various sectors, or you talk to a recent high school or UTG grad about the availability of jobs, you know, every indicator you look at every level of society, what you come up with, without any doubt whatsoever, and in a very clear message, is that the economy is not doing well. Yeah. We can talk about some of the causes of that, but to answer your question, I can quote some statistics. Inflation rate is very high. Our overall GDP per capita growth is less than 3%. What that tells you is that currently you have about, let's say, four different income categories. Categories of countries. You have low income, lower middle income, upper middle income, and high income countries. Gambia is obviously in a low income country.
Mhm.
At our current growth rate of GDP, for the next 30 years, we will still remain a low income country. For the next 30 years, that's like a whole new generation. Think about that. That is a very, very profound statement. In other words, if if the past decade is the standard we are going to stick with, there is no hope in the Gambia ever escaping the low income category. That's the lowest rung of society, lowest rung of group of countries. That is a very, very depressing reality. So this is something that our policymakers or people in the central bank, when they are releasing their quarterly statements, they do not, talk about implications. When they talk about our GDP is 5.7%, that is the GDP per capita. You have to remove the population growth rate. So when you remove the rate of population growth rate, the per capita growth is less than 3%. That for a poor country, that is really, really bad. In the US, if you get a 2% growth of income, that is actually very impressive
Yes.
because it's an advanced country. But in the case of a country like the Gambia, where you are a low income country, the poorest group of countries, you need GDP per capita growth rate that is close to 10%. And this is something that is possible in the Gambian context. I'm not talking about something that is impossible. It's
Mhm.
something that is possible, that's feasible, that's doable. provided you have the right leadership that is overseeing the affairs of the country with competence and with integrity. These are key, with competence and integrity.
And to that point too, I want you to talk about this also, if because you've laid out sort of the state of the economy very well, considering just the different categorizations of how countries around the world through international financial institutions, how they categorize what is a high income country, middle income country, and low income country. And Gambia, as we all know, is below the poverty line. So meaning essentially majority of the Gambian population live below literally $1 a day or less than $1 a day, right? And so what would be the important sort of mechanisms, right, both institution wise or even at say just micro level? What is it that the Gambia government needs to really focus on to ensure that these things are being, because they always make the argument, which you always talk about this too whenever I listen to you, that our deficit to GDP is improving, if that's a thing at all. And so I mean, sort of, we take a lot of loans from all of these institutions, and then our economy is mostly debt ridden. We use all of our economy and resources to pay the debts that we own, right? And so what are some of the physical areas that they need to really focus on to improve the state of our economy?
No, that one, it should not even be any matter of debate. In the Gambia, this should be something that is obvious. And any group of leaders that know, I mean, before you, as they always say, a big part of solving any problem is understanding the problem you are in, understanding it. Because before you can devise a solution, you have to understand the problem you are facing. In the Gambia, it should be obvious that the way to really kickstart the economy, grow it, create jobs, reduce poverty, is prioritizing agriculture.
Mhm.
And prioritizing agriculture has a lot of benefits. First and foremost, this is the sector which is responsible for food security. And as you pointed out, Gambia poverty is high, and poverty actually has been increasing. Current poverty rate in the Gambia is actually higher than what it was under Jammeh. So poverty is increasing, and a big part of that means that your average Gambian, food security is not something that is present.
Mhm.
So access to food or having sufficient quantity of food is so fundamental that you cannot plan or do anything unless you address food security. Nobody can plan for tomorrow or the year after or a decade from now when they are having problem feeding themselves and their family. So focusing on agriculture is important for that fundamental reason.
Mhm.
But the nice thing about focusing on agriculture also is that it is actually the most effective engine of growing the economy and creating jobs. Number one, it is labor intensive. It means no matter how mechanized it is, if you create opportunities in agriculture, you create jobs. I know this is not a theoretical matter for me. I have been operating an agribusiness farm for a decade now, and I know even though it's relatively by global standard, it is a small farm. By Gambian standard, it's relatively big. I'm creating employment for dozens of Gambian youths. Imagine if we had a different environment and encouragement where more people in the diaspora Gambians come and invest in agriculture, how much jobs we can create and how effectively we can tackle food security. The other thing why agriculture is important, apart from the direct job creation effect, is that in a country like the Gambia, you need agriculture to undergo a transformation before you can, so that you can have economic transformation in the sense that you can have other sectors like agro processing and industrialization. And these are real big engines for growth. Because in order to have processing, the agricultural sector has to undergo productivity growth. That means every crop or every sector within agriculture must experience significant productivity growth. Let me be a bit more specific what I mean by that. Currently in the Gambia, 1 hectare of rice, 1 hectare of land, for rice cultivation will give you at most 1 ton. That's the average in the country.
Mhm.
In Senegal next door, 1 hectare gives you 4 tons on average. Senegal is 4 times, they have 4 times the productivity of rice, you know. again, groundnut several times, maize, livestock, what all these indicators in agriculture, they have been going down. But you need this productivity to increase so that people go from subsistence agriculture to commercialized agriculture. And this provides inputs and intermediate products for agro processing and industrialization. And then you create jobs in urban areas where quality jobs in factories start to be created. Then all of these things that you are importing into the country now will start producing its own produce. This is very important. Why? Because right now, since we import every single item, including rice and all the essential products, when you import these things, what it does is that you constantly put pressure on our currency, which is the currency, it tends to depreciate. And this depreciation of the currency means the more we import, the more we pay. So even if global prices of items stay the same, because our currency is constantly depreciating, the cost of living in the country goes up and poverty keeps on increasing. The way you address that is things that you can produce effectively in the country. The government has a policy of focusing the production of those items locally. You create jobs, you prevent importation, so that what that will do, not only will it create jobs, it will also remove pressure from our dalasi. All of a sudden, our currency will start falling against the dollar, against the euro, against the CFA, against every major currency. The things that we actually need to import that we can't produce locally, like fuel and other things, they become affordable. So you can see, then the economy will be very different from what we have. We will have real structural transformation. You will, in fact, over time, you will need fewer people to produce the goods the food that you need. This is why, as countries develop, the agricultural sector shrinks, not because people are pulling people out of there by force, but as people make income, they go willfully, and by their own volition, they go into other sectors. And then, it is something that they are going into by opportunity rather than out of, being pushed into it out of poverty. Currently, our government is doing everything the opposite way. Right now, the government has endless programs to give guarantees to Gambian businesses to import rice from India. But we know in the Gambia today, we have enough arable land to produce all of the rice that we need. There is no need for the Gambia to import a single grain of rice. But by facilitating the importation of rice, and they are hoping that that will reduce the price of rice, in fact, it has never worked. Despite all of the guarantees the government has done, the price of rice keeps on increasing. Why? Because the more you import, the more pressure you put on the dollars to depreciate. And therefore, even if the price of rice falls internationally, in the Gambia, it will always go up because of the value of dollar cents. Will always keep falling down. So the solution to addressing our problems, whether in the short term for food security, whether in terms of job creation, whether in terms of economic transformation, is by prioritizing agriculture. So this is what has been missing here. This is the solution, and that should be obvious to any government that has any hope of moving this country out of poverty and putting us on a path towards development.
And I do really want to connect that to the next line of discussion, item of discussion that we're going to get into, which is fiscal discipline, curbing corruption, and mismanagement of public resources. And how do we, I mean, obviously, you know this a lot more than I probably ever would, is there is a correlation between institutional reforms, for example, through developmental models in terms of how that impact the growth of economics, for example, and impact directly on individuals and groups in different countries. And since 2016, when we had a change of government, there was a good faith support to Gambia in terms of where we could be developmental wise, but very little has been done in that respect. There is much to be desired. But would you also say that those, for example, the perceived or in fact, real corruption that is happening in this current government and their inability or refusal or whatever it is to set up even the anti-corruption commission since then, and also other forms of legal and institutional reforms that are meant to occur, is what's the connection to the whole holistic failure of our economic system that we have?
No, these are all interconnected, and it's good that I mean all of these things you touch on the surface they may seem like completely different things, but they are all interconnected. The lack of, to be specifically, the lack of reforms, whether in public finance, whether anti-corruption, the high level of debt to GDP ratio, failures to implement anti-corruption commission, existing programs the government has with the IMF. These are all interrelated. I've tried to make the point that the government will make a big deal of IMF providing extended credit facility, things like that to the government. I think it's very important for people to know there are certain IMF programs. The fact that you have with them is not a good thing. Just like going to this is probably not the best analogy, but it's the only thing I can think of right now. If you see somebody going to the hospital all the time, it's not a good sign of the health condition. IMF programs like staff managed program. Let me give an example. Gambia was on that program for almost 4 years. The average tenure of the average length of a standard staff managed program in IMF is less than 2 years. What that basically is telling you, the country cannot cannot basically do its own implementation of its own reforms. It needs IMF to basically handhold them to implement their reforms, and IMF has to come and monitor them closely. That's what a staff management program is. And if I give you the list of countries that have had to have a program like that, you'll understand why that is a bad sign. Things like South Sudan, Central African Republic, countries like Somalia. These are like the who of countries that things are going badly. Now, after that, the next program we have with IMF is the Extended Credit Facility. This is a program that IMF has with countries where they have balance of payment crisis. Basically, there is a high debt problem. They are close to having a debt distress. They have a very poor track record of domestic resource mobilization in a sustainable way. Out of control expenditures, and as a result, primary deficit is always high. And as constantly there is a buildup of debt, which means that GDP to debt to GDP rate is high, but also on an annual basis, the percentage of the total of the government budget that goes towards debt financing is very high. In the Gambia, a few years back, it was only a small percentage. 2 years ago, it went to like a quarter of our budget went into debt finance. Last budget, a third of our budget went into debt finance. At this rate, we are on track to have half of our annual budget going into debt finance. What creates this problem is basically very poor macroeconomic management and poor public finance management. Let me break that down a bit. In public, when it comes to public finance, you have two aspects: revenues and expenditures. Both of these areas have a big problem. I mean, we have problems with them, but the one that I want to focus on is expenditures. See, Gambia is not poor because our tax revenue we are collecting is small or we are not getting assistance. No, Gambia is poor precisely because the resources that we are spending them poorly. We are not prioritizing the right sectors. As I always point out, you cannot look at Gambia's economy and the things we need to prioritize. And annually in your budget, you spend $2 billion for embassies, on Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Recurrent budget is one of the biggest ones. It's more than the development budget we spend on agriculture, more than development budget we spend on education. It's more than development budget we spend on things like even health. Does that make sense? I mean, in the US, you live in the US, for instance. How come we should have a Gambian embassy in Washington, D.C., and also UN mission in New York, which by the Acela train is only 3 to 4 hours? Shouldn't we, one office should suffice to do both roles? Why do we have embassies in Russia, in Venezuela, in Cuba? We should be able to reduce our number of embassies and their expenditures. For a country of our level of income, it should be a fraction of our Ministry of Foreign Affairs budget. If you take three-quarters of that budget of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you multiply it by 5 over a 5-year period, do you know that that income alone that will be saving, that can address all our energy needs? It can cover most of the agricultural investment we need, or do a road network in urban areas. So for me, the problem here in the Gambia, not only for me, but for people who analyze that have worked with the government, whether it's the World Bank or ADB or the IMF, the problem that we have, the public finance management or the macroeconomic problems that we have is uh, lack of prioritization in our expenditures. And also, but when you realize that you dig that down into the various individual expenditures or state-owned enterprises or various expenditure items, what you find is that you find incredible amount of corruption. For instance, I once went through the annual financial statements of NAWEC from 2017 to 2022. The private auditors in NAWEC alone, they were able to basically estimated a minimum of no, not a minimum, well over $1 billion unaccounted for.
That's insane.
In NAWEC alone. Now, we recently are talking about the National Audit Office, report on a few years. But remember, that's only for 3 years, 2021, 2022, 2023. And it's not a total auditing of the whole government. It's just a certain areas. And there, again, we found billions. If you look at the Al-Barak issue, if you look at Africa 50, if you look, many of these things, the only logical explanation is that some people are getting paid. So corruption is happening. A few people are benefiting at the expense of the whole country. So basically, I'm trying to bring all of these things that you mentioned in your question. These are all interconnected. The lack of reform exists because there are individuals at the top level of the government that benefit from the status quo. Because the reason, if you look at the energy sector, we have had like a very, very crappy deals with car power ships. At the port, we have a very crappy concession with Al-Bayrak. The reasons those crappy concessions are in existence and the reason they persist is because there are certain individuals that do benefit from that arrangement. And they don't care about the fact that the average Gambian or the rest of us are suffering as a result of it. So when you look at lack of implementation of reforms, poor public finance management, accumulation of debt, persistence of deficits, ubiquitous corruption to the extent that when an IMF mission comes and they make a point of emphasizing that the anti-corruption commission must come into existence. When IMF, institutions, they are very, very careful about talking in diplomatic tones, following protocol. But when they come to a country and have to actually emphasize something like an anti-corruption mission, all you need to know is that corruption in the Gambia today is completely out of control.
Whenever sometimes I listen to you in respect to your reaction with Gambia public officials, including the current finance minister, I mean, you always articulate your thoughts with so much clarity and precision, but also with so much sort of uh, disdain about how they manage our resources. And I say this specifically in respect to some of these concessions. I don't think a lot of people really understand what these are. I think government has been empowered with the responsibility to manage our resources, including our assets. Now, government has sort of, give up on that responsibility to say that we're not competent to do this, and that we are going to give up our powers to other people to come and invest in this process and do it. The manner in which those processes take place, only people, few individuals like you who are interested, are really interested, would go dive into it to analyze for people and raise awareness for people to understand the consequences of some of these partnerships or agreements that we have with these overnight investors, or so-called investors that come into the Gambia. But and this government has a penchant for this. This is not the first time. The ports project with Al Barak is not the first. We've also seen the bridge, and it seems like it's very characteristic of what they do. So talk to us a little bit about what is the standard practice for this kind of thing for other countries who have done it and it has worked out for them, and why is it this government is doing it wrong? And especially in respect to, because I think anytime you speak, the government of the Gambia comes out to create this facade, or even to rebuke, or to sort of position your analysis or things that you find out as one that is not a serious argument at all. They constantly do that. But if anybody who is serious and reads into what you're putting out would understand that, look, this guy is raising serious alarm, right? So what is the standard practice for countries that do this, and why is it such a what looks like a colossal failure in our government context? So much that an investor now wants to use, instead of putting in the equity for what is being agreed on, is using the asset to try to acquire more loans for themselves.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is any government that is very serious. I mean, when you are dealing with the private sector, you you know, the key thing here is when you are a competent group of authorities, the first thing you realize is you are not just overconfident about your competence. The thing about competence is that you also know where your competence ends. You also know. I mean, I've worked in ADB where we've had transactions with private entities, and this is the African Development Bank, which had a very, very big legal department. That's a whole legal department with various divisions. But whenever the African Development Bank is dealing with private enterprises or companies, they go and hire outside legal expert to complement their legal department, because they know when you are dealing with the private sector, you are dealing with a motivated entity that has a singular focus in that particular sector. So they are really motivated. This being their bread and butter, they are well versed in that sector. You only start thinking about a particular project here and there when you have something there. But remember, the company you are dealing with is specialized in that sector. Everyone they've hired them for the purposes of mastering that sector, earning income in that sector. And those people's livelihood depends on delivering outcomes and delivering results in that sector. So you have to realize that when you have let's say a concession agreement, whether it's a road, whether it's a port, whether it's a bridge, any sort of concession agreement, you need to realize right now you are overmatched. You need assistance. This is why at the African Development Bank, there's a facility there called the African Legal Support Facility. It is a trust fund that provides grants, free money to African countries that are going to negotiate with private companies and give them assistance so that they can go and hire the best lawyers. You know, the problem is that I have actually helped this Gambia government in a few of those. I went and assisted this Gambia government, this current one, to get up to $1 million grant. And in one particular case, they were going to get only 5 million. But when I assisted them, they got that grant. Guess how much they got in that negotiation? They ended up getting $35 million.
Damn.
But in most, the only condition in that grant is that the ADB will not give you the money yourself, because they don't want the money to be stolen and mismanaged. If you need assistance, you tell them what sort of assistance you need, what sort of legal facility. They will tell you, go and find the lawyers anywhere in the world. We will pay the lawyers directly. You won't see the money. Now, what that does is that there are many officials in this government who will tell you, we don't want that kind of help. Give us the money. If you're not going to give us the money, we don't want it. I have spoken to a permanent secretary who told me that he doesn't like this kind of assistance because he wants them to receive the money. Because, of course, when they get the money, they can go and play with it. So, getting to your point, this sort of processes, the way governments handle this is by realizing what your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. And where your weaknesses are, you try to mitigate those by finding places that can assist you. So when the Gambia government is going to negotiate with Africa 50, the first thing they needed to do is know that they know very little. The worst thing you can do is for the Minister of Finance alone to go with one advisor to go and negotiate, as Syndicator did, which is why I've said this before, and I'm going to repeat this again. Syndicator is the most incompetent Minister of Finance the Gambia has, the unfortunate having as a Minister of Finance. Syndicator negotiated with Africa 50 without any outside help, without realizing that he doesn't understand asset recycling. That even if you understand it, you have to go with competent lawyers. Even a lawyer, a well-known lawyer, when they have a court case, they get a lawyer. They don't go and represent themselves. What do
Yes.
they say about a lawyer representing himself? A lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client.
Mhm.
So anybody who thinks that they know enough, that my field is development economics. I have worked in many concession agreements. But if you were to make me Minister of Finance, I will never have my head too full thinking that I can go and negotiate with a company, because they are going to come on one side full of the best lawyers in the world who are specialized only in that area. They will take you out to lunch before you know it. They'll put clauses there where they're essentially laughing at you and you don't know. Like the clause they put in the Africa 50 saying that Gambia cannot put any bridge for 100 kilometers, but they leave an exception for the Bara Banjul Bridge, knowing that there is no way Gambia can build a bridge in Bara Banjul over the next 25 years.
Mhm.
The thing here is that both the concession agreement in Albayrak and also in the Africa 50 and many others that we've had, like the fisheries negotiation with the EU, Gambia did not get the assistance they needed because the people who were there, either through sheer incompetence or professional malpractice, they didn't, identify where their weaknesses are and make sure that they bring factors in that to mitigate those. So, whenever you're dealing with this, is to realize where your weaknesses are. You bring them in, and always have this overriding principle, which is whatever I'm doing, what is in the best long-term interest of the country, because that's the only thing that matters. If this doesn't animate and drive public officials, you end up with deals that will cost the country forever. So, for instance, in Africa 50, the, the professional malpractice that syndicated did there will cost the Gambia for a whole generation, because for the next 25 years, we will not get any revenue from the bridge. We will not get any tax income. We will not be able to build any bridge for 100 kilometers of River Gambia. During that whole time, how much did we get? We will get less than 100 million. But do you know how much the bridge has been valued? The bridge has been valued at over 500 million. So we have lost up to 400 million US dollars, which is almost 80% of our annual budget, which is more than the value of every single road that our borough government has ever paved in the Gambia, which is more than any investment this government has ever made in the energy sector, which is more than any investment this government has made in the education sector, which is more than any investment this government has made in the health sector. So this is very costly.
And it's sad too. It's pretty sad too. I think
Absolutely.
and people always say, why would you blame always impute responsibility on the leader of the I said, because he's the president of the country. Said any serious place or any serious company, if the manager fails, the manager goes. I mean, if anybody else under the lower ranks did not do their job, the manager lets them go. But we've seen in our context just a circumstance where it almost feels as though the leader emboldens this sort of behaviors to continue to happen. Uh, so much so that you tend to question whether he, in fact, seems to benefit either directly or indirectly in some of these processes as well. Um, and just a simple point too that I wanted to highlight. The fees that have been collected at the airport. A lot of people that come outside of the Gambia talk about this, right? Also, again, because of your experience around these kind of issues, I wanted to pick your brain on the standard practice for these kind of things, because one is very inefficient, right? Two, the circumstances for which those funds are actually going is very unclear to a lot of people as well. But everybody is responsible when you come to the airport to pay a certain amount of money. What is your understanding of that sort of, because the government just gets a public makes a regulation to say everybody is going to pay this kind of amount, right? And I also know that certain countries, for example, the figure comes out in different forms, shapes, or ways, but ours is very unique. What is your understanding of that process before we move on to other issues?
No, I mean that one is also is one of the things I highlight as one of the terrible deals this government has done. We've already lost millions of dollars in that deal. By the way, before Security Port started operating, they made the Gambia government pay $4 million. That was also one of the things that was highlighted by the National Audit Office as a fee we shouldn't have paid. But why? Again, if you want to go to the root cause of that problem, that whole negotiation between the Gambia government and security force was handled by a single permanent secretary. a single permanent secretary with zero experience in concession negotiation. A single, no outside help, no involvement or signing off from the Attorney General's chambers. So this is where that was the root of it. But I mean, it's so bad. First of all, ask yourself how many, you travel around. I'm sure you come to Gambia. How many countries do you go to where people pay cash money entering or leaving the country? No. Why?
Zero.
Because even if there is a fee, it is always put into the air ticket. The reason why the international institution that is responsible for regulating those areas refused for that, Gambia already has a lot of fees and taxes that are already added into air tickets. So this one would have been unusually high. So that international institution that regulates that didn't allow this one to be included. So this is something that, in a way, it is a fitting thing for everyone coming in to know that here is a banana republic, that this banana republic was created by people, leaders in the country, who really have, no idea what they are doing, or if they have some idea what they are doing things without the interest of their country at heart. Because no Gambian citizen that is competent, or Gambian official who is competent, with even a shred, I mean, who is just thinking, you don't even have to be highly educated, but certain clauses, if they are put in an agreement, alarm bells will start ringing in your head that this is not the best thing for my country. But the only way that you can explain somebody going along with that is that they've been bribed, and they started looking only at their own personal interest, what's going into their pocket, as opposed to what is happening right now. Unless you have a serious government that comes in and put pressures on these companies to try to renegotiate these agreements to the extent possible. Because I can tell you, when the National Audit Office raised this, the Barrow government immediately came with a statement that they are not going to look into this contract again. They are happy with it, that the audit reports are just mere opinion. So there is no willingness, no matter how bad the things are, there is no willingness in this government to, in fact, even reflect on some of the egregious agreements that they have served. I mean, they have really imposed on the Gambia, and for decades, to come, almost a whole generation to come. So if people are looking at, finding out ways of pulling Gambia from the current mess we are in, this current government is not the answer, unfortunately, because they are the source of the problem, and there is no indication that they have any willingness to, in fact, try to ameliorate or correct the massive problems they have created for the country.
Now, Dr. Gajiko, some of your critics, which I think people now have sort of created that space for themselves to, since you've declared your intention to start a political party in the Gambia. There has been a wave of criticisms coming your way, which I'm sure you're very happy to take. And, because I know you're a very tolerant person, you're also very highly traveled and very educated as well. And I always like to emphasize that, because I think that should be the yardstick for our dialogue. People must be able to hear each other out. People must be able to criticize others so long they are based on issue and without having to go personal, at other people, because I think that's important. But I think for most people, the struggle for them is Dr. Gajiko as an economist is revered, he's knowledgeable, he's experienced, he's skilled, and so they really value your opinions then. But the question also becomes whether those opinions or views were not highly influenced by anticipation of getting involved in politics eventually, which should not even be an issue at all, because I think that any reasonable person can look at the circumstance and say, oh, what he is saying is issue based, is factual, these are not his opinions. But recently, when you came out and, in fact, argued, among other things, that United Democratic Party, through Honorable Usino Dabo, is going to lose to President Barrow. The context, we don't have to get into all of that completely, but I think a segment of, I think I saw a critic online who said that you are an economist, you know for certain that most of your opinion should be based on facts, and also, the political landscape is fluid and things change. And so, how are we going to make the distinction between relying on an economics perspective that is based on facts and numbers and grounded in quality or quantitative data, And when we just focus on at what end do we just only look at Dr. Gajiko as a politician, because these things are going to coexist if they are not coexisting already.
No, it's a valid point, and I think it's people should have a critical mind to anyone in the public space. In fact, I welcome it, and I think the more critical we are of people in the public space, whether they are public commentators, completely apolitical, or whether they are politicians, the better. Because even if I have no political ambition, if I'm approaching the public and making a comment about what the government is doing wrongly, I should approach it with the expectation that there'll be critical reception, which is why if and my record is public, what I have said in podcasts, in TV interviews, on newspaper articles is out there for the public to see. Everyone is free to dissect it. When I bring my argument, I base it on substance, on facts. I muster data, statistics. I rely on my experience. And when I say something is wrong, I just don't, I don't engage in ad hominem attacks. I don't engage in substanceless pronouncement. I make sure that when I engage in issues, they are fact-based, they are substance-based. So, my economic analysis or my commentary on state of affairs, I think speaks for itself. But of course, now that I'm entering politics, there will be pronouncements I'll make where I am the hat I have on would be as a political commentator. So when I talk and make a statement about who I believe has a higher chance of winning or that somebody doesn't win, that's not Ousman the economist talking. That's Ousman making giving his opinion. Now, I totally agree with you. Things are extremely fluid. The only thing one can say with certainty about the election tomorrow is that it is highly it's highly unpredictable. Now, my position, my comments on who is likely to win versus somebody else, that was in part of like explaining why I decided to enter politics. The way I think the situation right now is that I believe Gambians need change. So, but before I get into that, to address your other point, whether my commentary before, was influenced by my anticipation of entering politics. Again, let me emphasize the fact people can go and judge what I've said, what I've written on their merits. Even before I announced my political ambition, believe me, if I said things that are not supported by facts, by evidence, the first people who would have taken me to task would have been government officials. They'll bring out statistics, they'll bring out indicators, they'll bring out other experts, to either debate me or to, dispute what I say. But look at the track record. See whether this government has been able or willing or able to challenge what I have said. I have said many things about the various ministers, and I don't go and when I'm talking, I'm very specific about which minister, which ministry, which official I'm talking about. I don't go and just make innuendos. I say directly. When I talk about syndicator, if he disputes what I'm saying, let him bring the information. If he disputes what I'm saying about Africa 50, I have the evidence. Let him bring the evidence. We can meet in any podcast, but he dare not come out because he knows exactly what I'm saying is based on facts. Same thing on other ministers, whether it's Ministry of Works, whether Mr. Babukar Diouf, who was formerly Ministry of Industry. Everything I have said about the government, about the economy, about various specific sectors, these are substance-based, fact-based. So the point about whether I sort of say things in anticipation, I think I will let people decide.
Yeah.
If people can, even if I wasn't going to go into politics, people should be able to decide whether what I was saying was substance or backed by evidence or not. Yeah. So for me, I don't think that's a problem, but I welcome the fact
Yeah.
that whether it's Ousman the commentator, Ousman the economist, but especially now with Ousman the politician, I think people should have a very critical mind when anybody stands in public, says something, promises anything. I believe the more critical we are to public officials, the more that they have to justify to us what they know, what they can do, what they can prove to the Gambian people in terms of their readiness. their capability, their integrity they have. Not only to, the key here is you have to understand the problem and demonstrate your ability to solve it. Now, we cannot predict the future. So, but the best way we can predict about somebody's ability to do something when they're in government is look at their track record so far. My track record here is somebody who has worked in the private sector. I didn't come and join somebody's company. I started my own company. I have been a philanthropist. I have worked in agriculture, not only as an entrepreneur, but as somebody who helps village gardens throughout this whole country. I have worked in the international arena where I have worked on different projects in different countries. So for me, addressing the problems in the Gambia, particularly in the sectors that should be prioritized, like agriculture, I think my track record should be evident to everyone in terms of my readiness, and in terms of my readiness, my ability, and my integrity to ensure that this country is on the right development track, if given the privilege to serve the people.
Now, Doctor, you know very well, Gambian political terrain is very, 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 for a lack of better word, dirty. I'll just call it that way. And also, Gambian voting habits for substantially it's been influenced by a lot of factors, including, group voting habits, for example, geography, and also, we are now short of intellectuals in the Gambian political space. We have lawyers, we have business individuals, we have people across the sector for a very long time who have sort of been in our political space, right? And to make the point that I think a sector of our society has been very disappointed with certain level of intellectuals who are in our political space because of their lack of integrity, conviction, and also consistency. People think that it's okay for you to tell me one thing today and then tomorrow you go on for something completely different. It has been very emblematic of our political space. And so, and one could also make the case that I think for the most part, since we had independence, intellectuals have been at the heart of our economic stagnation in many ways. And we can spend a whole day to talk about this in terms of people who are so-called intellectuals, including people with PhDs, even in the current government that we have, right? And so I wanted you to touch on a little bit about that, to make the decision that being at that independent level as an economist gives you that leverage for people to really take you seriously, to listen to you. But also, there is a bigger responsibility coming with making a change by having power. And you can't do that by just changing the mindset of the people by just being an economist. So I was just curious in terms of what do you think you bring to the fore that many politicians that we have currently, like you, do not have?
No, it's a good point. And again, people cannot be blamed for having cynical reception to newcomers coming in. One little side note: I think the term intellectual, we abuse it a lot. But point taken, in any government, you're going to have highly educated people. Now, of
True.
course, you have the likes of Dr. Ismail Assise, who, a few years ago was saying one thing, then all of a sudden went and joined the government. Now is singing a completely different tune because they filled his pocket with money. So people who have no integrity at all, like people like Dr. Sise, make it very difficult for any newcomer to come in because people now are going to have a valid reason for questioning the motivation for people coming in. Are they looking for a job? Are they looking for something else? If they are offered something, are they going to sing a different tune? So I think your questions are very fair. Um, First of all, I will tell there is absolutely zero chance for me to, for me to join this NPP government. Absolutely,
NPP, yes.
there is no, there's nothing they will offer me. I mean, you see, a lot of people can be called doctors, a lot of people can be called highly educated, but the thing is, not everyone who is highly educated is the same. And I think education is important, but it can be oversold. I've met a lot of people in the
Yes.
Gambia today, many young people who just have, young, even in government, just have a bachelor's degree. I will take them over many people with PhDs. I've met people in some communities with only high school education. I will take them over many MP. The division I was leading in ADB, every single one of them had a PhD. I know the value of PhD, but I also know its limitations. It is not. It is not the PhD that makes somebody. It is the person that makes that makes the PhD worthwhile. Some people, given their luck in life or be lucky to be born in an influential family, can easily get any degree they want, not because they are academically very strong, but because they don't want for funding. They don't even have to worry about financing their education. So the point here is not that people should listen to Dr. Gajigo because he has a PhD. I think what I always stress to people when I talk to them is look at the person's background. Anybody today who is standing in front of the Gambian people is not a child. It's an adult with a history and a track record. If you look at Dr. Ismail Cisse's of the world today, and they're doing what they are doing, one shouldn't be very surprised if you look at their track record, what they were doing, what people knew them to be doing, what they were engaged in before they stood before us seeking for a position of power or responsibility. You could say the same thing with people like Sidinjai and many others in government who are the shining examples of lack of integrity. So when somebody stands before you, my qualifications, education, yes, is part of them, but it is not the central part. I tell people to look at my track record. You see, you said something here which is very important. We have a lot of highly educated people in politics, and at the end of the day, they don't do well against the ruling government. But I don't, if you talk to many people, they will say something like, in the Gambia, if you have money or, you can buy voters, you give some people a bag of rice, they will vote for you. So people are easy to be bought. I think that is very unfair to the Gambian voters. The reason why the ruling party easily beat any of its opposition is that the way they interact with the electorate is essentially the same. They all have the same strategy. And I am telling you this not on some abstract economic context or some theorizing. I'm telling you from personal experience. For the past 4 years, due to the combination of my own farm work and the various projects I've been running on the ground, I have gone to every single district in the Gambia. There is not a single district I've not visited. In many districts, I have been to multiple communities there. I've interacted with people to have a better understanding of the difficulties that people face. What are people's aspirations? What are the Gambia is a small country, but today, if you talk to somebody in Gunjur versus somebody in Fuladu versus somebody in Nyani versus somebody in Wuli, you'll hear different things. I can give you an example. In places like Joren, Joben, Jahanka, Ker Usman Boy in Upper Fuladu East. Those are areas I've visited over quite a lot recently. These areas are not very far from Ansam, but there today, if you want to go and somebody wants to be on WhatsApp, they have to use a Senegalese SIM card. They can't use Africell, Kincell, Comium because there's almost no reception. There today, if you want vegetables, they all come from Casamas. Even drinking water is a basic problem. So if you go to other parts, you'll find different sort of problems. The point I'm trying to say here is that many Gambian politicians, including those in this existing opposition, you will only see them going to meet the electorate when the election comes. That intervening 5-year period, none of them will be found there. They only go when there are particular events or elections are coming up. So if the incumbent and the opposition are all acting in the same way, the only thing that differentiates them is the one party that has resources to go and buy. Essentially, they are all transactional, except you have a poor transactional guy and a rich transactional guy. The rich one being NPP, the poor transactional guy being the other opposition. So the difference here that I can say that is that I have spent a better part of these 5 years going around the whole country, meeting people in the communities, talking to them about what their problems are. To the extent where my own resources allow, I have funded some projects there across various sectors, work with many youth groups, women groups, and across various socioeconomic groups in various sectors. When I go today and talk to those people about my my aspirations, my goal of starting a political party so that I can bring change to them, I approach them with the credibility that many of these new and existing political actors don't have. because I'm not only approaching them today because I'm seeking a political office, because I have interacted with them, understood what their problems are. Places in Sandu, in Wuli, in Kantora, in Tumana, in Same, in Nyanija, in Salum, in Badipu, in Lomi, in Yokadu, in Jara, in Kiang, in Yamina, in Foni. These are all areas I've been multiple times, and I've had interactive with them substantively. So when I stand before people telling them that I'm standing before them as somebody who is requesting or seeking the privilege of being in office to help put this country on the right development path. I'm not going to stand there because I believe that Dr. Gajigo, I have a doctor in my title or have a PhD or a master's degree. It's because number one, my background, my professional background up to this point is there for everyone to see. Work I have done in the country is there for everyone to see. I don't have a baggage. I don't have a track record in this government of abetting what they are doing or benefiting from any corruption. No. I have worked in institutions where if I hadn't performed very well, I wouldn't be where I am. I have worked in the sectors that are critical to the Gambia in many parts of the world. So I'm able to really frame very well the sectors that should be prioritized in the Gambia. But most importantly, I have met the Gambian people. I've spoken to Gambian people in all the regions of the country, and have a good understanding what the problem is. And therefore, when I say, and this will be something that when we launch the party officially, because as you know, we are still waiting to hear from IEC. When we launch, you will see that our party, we just don't have a manifesto. Every political party has a manifesto. But we also have a document for every sector in the country, every cross-cutting issue. Because any government here that wants to run this country, you have to hit the ground running. You cannot learn on the job. We have suffered too long for that. Every single sector, fisheries, energy, education, health, agriculture, transportation, urban planning, water and sanitation, everything, you get the diaspora, you have to diagnose the problem, know how important it is, what are the existing problems, what the government is doing wrongly about it, and what changes you are going to bring so that this country can finally attain this development that citizens deserve. So this is what I have to say, and and in due course, these things will all be with the Gambian people, whether they are abroad or whether they are here.
I mean, thank you very much, Doctor, for sharing that. And just quickly, too, for people who are interested to, even at this point, to get in touch, for example, they want to be part of the process. He said there's a WhatsApp group page on the Ousman's Facebook page. You can check out and join the WhatsApp group if you're interested to talk to Doctor more about the Patriotic Progressive Alliance, PPA. That's the name of their upcoming political party. But also, an important point that I want to highlight is that I think we must continue to encourage serious people, serious professionals, serious Gambians who care deeply about Gambia to not just be passive bystanders in the decision-making process of our country. Not only voting is important, but if you also believe strongly, you have a certain level of conviction about how you want to change the lives of the Gambia, you need power. That's just the truth. Right, and to do that is you have to throw your heart into the ring to be a politician in the Gambia.
Exactly.
Now that's a whole different game. I think everybody has the right to do that, and people continue to criticize others for to say that, oh, we have, that's the purpose, that's the essence of our multi-party democratic system. If we are going to have 100 political presidential candidates, IEC is responsible. They should hire enough individuals to do their job. That should be the process. I don't think the process should be.
This is a very, very important point, Mr. Sonko. I cannot stress this enough. I mean, this point you raise here. When I tell many people I was going to go into politics, the first thing I had, people were telling me is that, oh, not you. No, I mean, you want to enter that dirty thing. It's very dirty politics. I mean, you have other options. Why don't you just stay in it? I mean, why do you need to enter here? But the hidden implied assumption here is that people enter politics to go and make something, to go and make money for themselves, or seek a position that otherwise they couldn't get on merit. See, but what I tell people here is that if we politics is like that mainly because the kind of politicians we have today. The only way we can change the character, the nature of our politics is change the kind of people who enter there. Listen, I don't enjoy being criticized or being, or all sort of insults being directed at at myself. I could have avoided that if I stayed in my international jobs. People will only have respect for me. Nobody will come and insult me. You know, if I would have had an easy life. Or I could just stay in my private company that I'm running right now. But I do this mainly because I believe things can be better. And unless not everybody also has the means. There are people I know who would want to enter politics, but they have not been lucky enough to have the resources. Because let's face it, right now, just to register the party is 1 million, has been increased to 2 million. The nomination next year has been increased another million. Basically, you are saying most Gambians you shouldn't enter politics. But this is not something where the barrier of entry should be high. So Gambians here, yes, we have a lot of political parties, but realize that most of these people who enter politics, they don't enter for the right reason. Look at all of the people who are in Barrow's coalition. Many of them are one-man parties. They are in there so
Yeah.
that they can get an ambassadorship or a ministerial post. So when we are counting here, remember you are counting all of those people. What we need here, even as you have just rightly said, even if there are 100 people, that's fine. What matters is that in the battleground of ideas, development ideas, let people go. We listen. At the end of the day, Gambian electorates, let them decide. Let IEC make the mechanism for people to come and participate. What the last thing we want is to restrict entrance, because it will only create room for those people who are only desperate to go there because that's the only way they can make a living. If you make entering politics very difficult, those who have outside options to do other things will say, why bother? Why bother? And that we will be poorer for it. And we will continue to have a political landscape that is characterized by dirty politics, that is characterized by politicians who are there for themselves. Eventually, when people go and they know that people can make the determination to select the best candidates, quality will eventually shine through. It will not be easy. 1 year to go is a long time. There will be a lot of mudslinging. Yeah, but if that's what it takes to make sure that the people are given an opportunity to select a good leader so that we can have a positive, not only a change, but also the kind of leadership that will put the country forward, then we need to make sure that happens. Because people need to realize there are two goals here. The first goal is change, but that's just part of the battle. The other part that is very important is who comes in after the change. Because you don't want the same government that you replace just replaced by a different face or somebody even worse. We have suffered enough for that. So we need to think about changing the current leadership, the current government, but also think about the sort of individual. Maybe it's not me. I'm putting in my heart in the ring. It could be somebody that's coming in, but let's give everyone who's coming in a chance. At the end of the day, 1 year is a long time. At the end of the day, we will make a determination through the grueling test of campaign who has the right stuff to be given that privilege of leading the country.
Now, perhaps second to last question before I give you the opportunity to make a final statement. Again, the political terrain is very fluid. 1 year is a long time, and there are various parties that I'm sure for sure you look at, and perhaps there is some level of semblance of what perhaps be a potential partnership, or that happens a lot in our country, especially in light of our most recent election. Actually, I think all of our presidential elections, everybody who won get into some form of partnership with other parties. So what's the possibility looking into our political environment right now? You can never say never. That things happen, a lot of things happen, but what are some of like those important values, that public values, that you look at certain parties and be like, yes, Politics, that values don't matter, but it should matter, and we're not going to get into any alignment or any agreement with any party, not least NPP at all. We just cross that out. That's not going to happen. For example, you've made that categorically clear. But in terms of the rest of those, is there any chance at all that you look at and be like, yeah, I can see us doing something with this party? Because you're not even a party yet. You're just in the beginning of creating one.
Yeah. No, that's a valid point. Here, given the large number of parties in the opposition, the likelihood, the chances of removing the regime will be much higher if there's some sort of a coalition, and I believe that will happen. But I'm glad you give me the opportunity to elaborate on this because for us, we are definitely open to, like I said, the only party we will rule out is the ruling NPP and whichever parties with them. But as far as other opposition parties are concerned, we are open to an alliance with them. But the key thing here is be clear about what the objectives are and making sure we are clear about the principles that will guide that coalition formation. For us, it will be, the coalition would always be about putting the interest of the country forward, not the interest of individual politicians. Like, I will not be part of any coalition where there'll be discussion of which position, which ministerial position I will get, somebody will get, who will be, starting to divide the spoils of war before you even get to power. When that happens in any sort of coalition talks, it means people are driven more by personal gains than the national interest. I think here, if there is any coalition discussion, it should be first, let's find the common ground. Let's find the common principle that bind us. Do we share the same goal of bringing a real change? A change here which has two components: remove the current leadership, but replace it with a better leader. Once we agree on that in principle, we come together. The issue of who is going to lead the coalition can come down the road, because once you agree on that, the other parts become a lot easier. Yeah. So for us, we are open to that discussion, and I welcome it. And I have very high confidence that it will happen, because I think people are ready for a change. I'm not somebody who have this burning desire to say that I must be president or not, or if not, I'm not entering anything. I even tell people, suppose we have a grand coalition, but they go and put somebody there who I don't believe has the nation's interest at heart. I would rather sit out, go back to my private sector work, than to be part of that grand coalition that I know will have 100% certainty of winning. Because winning at any cost is not the goal. Winning with the right team for the right reason, this is the key here.
Well, finally, what is your call to hope, Dr. Gajiko? You do a lot of public commentary. You spend a lot of time to educate Gambians about, or even just sharing your thoughts about important issues. You could sit at home, spend time with your family, enjoy your agriculture that you're doing, and really even be outside Gambia and work for international financial or monetary institutions and still continue to be who you are in terms of your profession. But you choose to do this, and it comes at a great expense, which I know for sure it does, because Gambia it's an incredible place, but it's also a difficult place. So, what is really your call to? What keeps you going every day? You wake up knowing fully well that it's another day that we have to do exactly the same, in hope that we're able to change the social and economic well-being of our society and change the lives of Gambians. What really keeps you going?
Oh, very good question. I think what really keeps me going is me every time I go outside of my house, whether I'm driving to Banjul, I see the situation there, or driving through Serekunda, driving through Bundung, or going up country. Because my farms, by the way, are located all across the country. I have one in West Coast, one in URR, one in NBR. So when I'm going around my farms, I literally go around the country. Because when I drive here, my farm in URR is only 5 kilometers from Koina. When I cross the Pasamasi Road in Woolley, I come all the way on the other side. So anytime I'm going around the country, you know, basically your eye is assaulted with all sorts of things that are going wrong that could be done better. What keeps me going is the knowledge that the solution to all of these problems exist. They are feasible, they are attainable. What you need is only the right leadership. So instead of running into despair and saying there are so many problems, I give up my, I give up, I throw my hands in the air. I compare this with other countries I've been to where things are truly intractable, things are bad. I've gone on missions in many parts of of Africa where things are really tough. I've been to Democratic Republic of Congo where you know, you drive through Congo, you see how bad things are. You go to parts of Mozambique where, despite the civil war ending more than a decade ago, you will still find buildings that are riddled with bullet holes. You go to, I've been to Libya where, our plane landed in Benghazi and I wasn't sure when we will be allowed to take off. So you go to many parts of the world where things are really intractable, where even if you have a very competent leadership, it will be very hard to imagine those countries pulling themselves out of the current situation they are in. We are an extremely lucky country to be in a situation where we have a manageable problem.
Mhm.
Yes, we have problems in every sector, but when you sit down and think about it, the solutions that are there, they are all right at our fingertips. They don't even depend on getting foreign assistance. All they depend on is having the right leadership where the individuals are competent, they have integrity, and they are driven by what's in the long-term interest of the country. So knowing that this is possible, this is what drives me, and which is why I had no problem in throwing my heart in this ring. Because I think it's possible. I think it's doable, and I hope that through a combination of our own hard work, good luck, and by the grace of God, we can have the chance to usher in a new era in the Gambia in December 2026.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Gajiko. It was really wonderful chatting with you, and I sincerely appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come to me to talk to me about very important issues. And I say that important because right now, like I mentioned to you, myself, I'm taking a law and sustainable development class at the University of Washington, and so a lot of what you discuss in the
Excellent
first
school,
half.
by the way.
Thank you very much. A lot of what you were discussing in the first half is almost like you were teaching me a lot of what my professor was sharing with me in terms of development economics. So I learned a lot. I hope our audiences also learn a lot. Like I said, if you want to get in touch with Dr. Ousman Gajiko, his Facebook is Ousman Gajiko. They have a WhatsApp group as well. If you want to be part of their political journey as they await the decision on the outcome of their registration with the Independent Electoral Commission. But if you're also interested to learn about, his work as an economist, as a development economist too, I'm sure he's more than willing to always help students. Because I know for sure from here, I'm gonna be reaching out to you on my papers that I'm submitting to school because part of my class is really is your expert area. So really nice to pick your brain on few things. But overall, thank you so much. Really, I really appreciate talking to you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So it's a pleasure being on your program. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your night.